Hello and welcome everyone to the AFL Fantasy Fanatic AFLW Fantasy Round Review. We're recording live on Twitter. Oh, hang on, actually, no, damn it. Let me start that again. I didn't press go live on YouTube. Of course, that was the case. Far out. Try this again. Far out. Alrighty. That should be... Okay, beautiful. We're live. All right, let's start it again. Hello and welcome everyone to the AFL Fantasy Fanatics AFLW Fantasy Round Review. We're recording live on Twitter and on YouTube after finally pressing live on YouTube on Sunday, the 17th of September, after the completion of round 3 of the AFLW fantasy season. I'm your host and AFL Fantasy Fanatic, Bales, and you can find me on Twitter at BalesDT. As always, if there's a player you want discussed or a question you want answered, tweet us on the Spaces or the YouTube live chat, and we'll answer them at the end. So joining me, got a couple of special guests, but I'll obviously go to my co-host. He's Tom from GameDay Squad. Tom, mate, how are you?
G'day, mate. I am excellent. Yeah, as I mentioned before, ready to break down round 3. What a round it was. Shame the Swannies couldn't get a win, but gosh, there's some fantasy studs this one, mate. So can't wait to crack in and
it was a very, very good round. And then joining us is a special guest. You'll know him from the free Kick AFLW Fantasy Podcast, legend of a bloke, and you can find him at Liam AFLW Fantasy on Twitter. It's Liam, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Look, it was a pretty middling round for me fantasy-wise, but some players I've been hot on for a long time really did fire. So I'll cop the loss to my fantasy score, and I'll cop a win to my advice.
Well, we'll go straight to you, mate. How did you go in? Well, you can give us official and Moreau's Magic or just official, whatever you prefer. But, mate, how did you go and rank?
Yeah, so in official, I scored a 14-11, which puts me at overall rank 528, which means I've dropped about 250 spots. It was about 370 last week. So not a great round, probably anchored by a pretty average fantasy score, captain score. And then in Moreau's Magic, had a round rank of 75 and a round score of 1284, which puts me at rank 122.
Perfect. Well, who was your plus and minus 3? I dare say I know exactly who your plus 3 is going to.
Yeah, well, I'll start off with my negative 3 so I can just really get a bit of a run up into my positive.
That's fair enough.
I really think that I want to give my negative 3 to Kiara Bowers, but she still did score 104. I think the big one that killed me was probably Ash Riddell on the Friday night. I was scoring a 79, fresh up a 150 last week. Really does hurt when she'd been doing an excellent job to go toe-to-toe with Jazz Garner, who was a lot of other people's kind of M3 this year. To drop the 79 was really frustrating. And unfortunately, it was one of those situations where you could kind of see exactly why. She was being asked to be a real hard stoppage position in front of Georgie Prespakis. So she honestly did pretty well to get to that 79, given she really wasn't in that mark-heavy role that had got her to the 150 the week before. And then Laura Gardner is my plus 3. She's now the second highest scoring player this year. I'd just like everybody to know she's averaging 121.3, and she nearly broke the possessions record for a game against a team that I believe going into this round, the scale of hardness says that Brisbane were not only the hardest team for midfielders to score against, they were the hardest midfielders scoring against. Brisbane was the hardest of any position for any team. To come out with that was truly incredible. 41 touches, she had a bunch of tackles, bunch of marks. She's an absolute gun. I called it for the entirety of the preseason. Disappointing she's not a pod for me at this point, but far out she's good.
Oh, mate, it was a beautiful thing to watch. And it does echo very similar to last year where you guys, and especially Jono, was on about Abby Mackay, but sort of Laura Gardner's doing exactly that, but going even better. So she's
even bigger.
Yeah, she's going fantastic. So she was again very, very good. Tom, mate, how did you go in a game day squad, mate? What was your score? I don't know if the final scores and ranks have been just in that, but have you got an idea what you've scored?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I'm on about 2,050 points, it's saying on the leaderboard. Our leaderboards haven't updated, but I actually think it's going to be enough for top 10. We will find out soon enough. It'll update very soon. But I can see a lot of people in the top 10 right now that haven't cracked the 2,000 mark. So I'm very bullish this round. I think it's going to be quite well. But in terms of my +3, -3s, I was going to pick Laura Gardner. So maybe you beat me there, but it's pretty much the pick for the round. Like, what a fantastic game she had. But I might go to one of her teammates. This is someone in round 1 that I started gassing up, and I didn't want to jump the gun too early just in case. But Ali Morfitt is a machine. Multiple times throughout the game, she was roving her own ruck taps. She is averaging 16.5 disposals per game as a ruck currently. She wins over 50% of her ruck hitouts. She scored a fantastic goal today. She cracked over 100 again. She's looking like she will be the #1 ranked ruck for the season. And can I just remind you, she's 19 years old.
Yeah.
She hasn't even turned 20 yet. So not only is she going to be the best ruck for this season, but I'm going to come out and say that she might be one of the best dynasty assets to have, period, in AFLW fantasy, and especially on GameDay Squad as you keep your players from year to year. So that is someone that I'm so excited about.
Yeah, she was very, very good, mate. -3?
This was a tough one because she's had a fantastic year. Probably doesn't deserve it, but Harriet Cordner. So this is someone in my defending group that I thought was going to play a little bit better this week. So just trying to get up the score now. She didn't play horrible, but look, she only got 60 points as a silver. So I'm going to assume that was about 50 or so as a bronze player. But we've seen her score 80s and 90s every single week. But this just wasn't her. She had 10 disposals in this one, 4 handballs, 6 kicks, 3 marks, and 4 tackles. So she just didn't get her hands on the footy like she has in other games. So it's a little bit of shame. But for the season, she's averaging 14 disposals a game. So it's just a little bit off her. I think it's just an off week for her. I'm not too concerned moving forward. But unfortunately, she's going to cop my -3 just for this round.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And we'll discuss her when we get to that Carlton game. I'll quickly run through mine. I scored 14.25 in official, which put me in an overall rank of 367. So that dropped me 77 spots, which I was a bit disappointed with. I thought I was having an okay round. I guess just not having Jazz Garner was probably the big thing that cost me, having Ash Riddell there. Maria's Magic, I had a round rank of 131, so I was up to 168 overall, which is pretty good. I've struggled a bit in that this year, but starting to make up a little bit of ground, which is nice. And then GameDay Squad scored the 1970, which I believe will put me up in a decent spot for the round and overall rank.
Nice.
So plus the -3s, +3 for official. I've got to give it to my girl Noffy. Again, just model of consistency and ceiling. She's hasn't gone below 112 this year. She's gone back to about 120s, and 93% game time on the weekend was massive with those 15 tackles. So she was everywhere. -3. I won't go for Adele because Liam went there. I'll go -3 for. I'll go Chloe Malloy, but that's more the fact that it's just, I'm sure that she'll be fine. Just a lower score for her. She got tagged by Cassie Svark and Brisbane, a tough matchup. So it's not a bad -3, but hopefully she can go a bit better next week. For Maria's Magic, I'll give +3 for Gardner, -3 for Brand Catasano, just with the lower score there. And then for GameDay Squad, I'll give the +3 to, I'll go Noffy. Actually, no, I'll go Anya Tai there. Actually, I had Anya Tai in my lineup, so I'm very, very happy with her. And then -3 will go to Mim Strom, who was my lowest scoring player with 63 points. So not too great, but that's all right. Perfect. We'll get stuck into the games and run through some relevant players. As said before, if you guys have got a player you want discussed or question answered, put in the live chat of YouTube or the Twitter space comments, and we'll get to that once we've got through these. But we'll go through the games. And starting off the round, Geelong going down to Kangaroos in a pretty hotly contested game by 8 points. Liam, I'll go to you for the first one. Jazz Garner, just absolute jet. Back-to-back 150s, went 154 this week. I did see she got Brisbane this week. I expect Cassie Svark to be attached to her for the whole game. But what are your thoughts on Jazz Garner, and is she an option potentially to bring in for coaches this week? Liam, you're on mute, mate.
Sorry there, Bales. I'd love to launch and say, yeah, absolutely bring her in. But Kathy Spark, in terms of the player that I think would most impact Jazz Garner, she'd be the top of the list for taggers because she is just so strong. And that's kind of what Jazz Garner does. Is even when she is tagged, say by Meg McDonald in a final last year, her strength to get out of stoppages and her kind of running means that she can just run off basically any tag or overpower them. And Kathy Spark is one of the few players where I don't think there's a single player in the comp that can do that. So I think in the next fortnight to 3 weeks, we will all want Jazz Garner in our sides. It's just going to be a question of timing. In terms of upgrades to do this week, I query maybe whether you go against the grain and bring in a row bottom off a bad score, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone that says that I need that chance of 150 in my side. I may as well go there.
Yeah. So she's been so good. Do you think that maybe besides this week, do you reckon she's closing in on, well, she probably is at the Ebony Marinoff sort of level, but is she getting close, if not on the level of like Kiara Bowers?
I don't know if I can. I don't know if 1 week where Bowers only scores 100 and something, we can truly bring her down a rung. I think Garner has shown pretty categorically she's at that Noffy tier. And when I was doing kind of a top 5 on the pod this week, I had them as a pretty tight top 3 and then Rowbottom as a 4th. I think that Garner is definitely closer to Noffy than she is 4th. And you could make an argument that on their day, Jazz Garner is actually a higher ceiling player because she does drift forward and kick a lot more goals, but maybe is a little inconsistent by comparison. But I would not begrudge anyone that brings her into their side this week because you are really picking, I would say, probably the premier player in the competition and a top 3 fantasy player.
Yeah, agreed. Mia King had a good game as well, scored 120. I expect when Jenna Bruton comes out, that probably affects her a little bit and affects that midfield. So I think Garner will be fine and Riddell will be fine, but I think Mia King's probably the one that takes a little bit of a hit there. Georgie Prasparkas, 108. Tom, mate, I know you're a big fan of Georgie Prasparkas, and I know she's in your side. What did you make of her game on Friday afternoon?
First word that comes to mind is clean. She's clean in and out of the contest. She just uses the ball so well, and that she loves wave running with her teammates in Amy McDonald, Morrison, other people in that midfield. So I love what I see from her because she's just a workhorse. She doesn't stop throughout the game. She just gets from contest to contest. And if you're going to have someone in your midfield, you're going to be using capital there, then you're going to want someone like Georgie Prasparkas who is just going to, just continue to rack up possession after possession. And the fact that she kicked a goal this week as well was just the cherry on top for me. Like, what a fantastic game. 18 kicks, 8 handballs, a mark, 8 tackles, a goal. So just clean game all around. She got some attention throughout, but it just really didn't matter, in all honesty. She was just a class above in that contest. And, yeah, mate, I just couldn't be higher about a player. I know I just went on about Ali Morfitt, but, not Garner, Prasparkas as well as one of those dynasty options in GameDay Squad. You just can't overlook her right now. Fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. Nina Morrison just continues to get it done. That's 3 9 to start the year. Bit of a shame. I know all of us are probably hoping she'd just tick over the 100 mark, but still 9-9. You're not complaining at all with her. Amy Smith, for those people that held her, she got an 86, so she was pretty solid. So coaches that held her would be very happy. Ash Riddell, so Liam, I'll go to you for this one. So Ash Riddell only got the 79, as you said, was playing a bit of like a stoppage defensive role on Georgie Prasparkas throughout the game. Is it any concern for you with the 79? Is there a play to maybe move her to a Prasparkas or row bottom this week, or even a Garner, or are you still sticking fat after just the one bad game?
I was already considering trading out this week to begin with because of that Brisbane matchup, but then also the return of Jenna Bruton, I think, might take. I don't know if we're going to see a 150 from Riddell again, because Jenna Bruton is a pretty similar player who probably just doesn't get around as much and doesn't spread. But I think the thing that really killed Riddell this week is that because of her she was more, not so much tagging Prasparkas, she was actually trying to place herself in front of Prasparkas at stoppages, which meant that the week before she'd had 6 marks and 10 tackles, whereas this week she only has the 3 marks and 4 tackles. And it was actually Mia King and Garner who were doing all the mopping up on the tackle front. So, look, long term, if you held her, I don't think you'd be having a bad time. I just don't know if she can really match it with that top 5 group, which she can definitely do when she's basically just given free rein. And I think you can be happy if you're trading her out this week. You can go look over the 3 games. She scored that low 100, she scored a 150, and then a 70. You got more than what you're expecting out of her. And against 2 of them were elite matchups, and then a slightly tougher one with a worse role. I think you go, look, you really did your job. I'm going to put you up to someone who probably has a better role week to week.
Yeah. I'm sort of potentially the same thinking as well, with a few other players that I might look at trading out. Edmondson and Bresnahan, I know that both of them in my GameDay squads, they got 78 and 76 respectively, so are very good. Amy McDonald, 73, had a good sort of second half. She had quite a poor first half, but I'm sure this is just a down game for her, and she'll be back next week. Emma Carney sort of did a sort of usual, sort of having a quarter or 2 off, got to her sort of 70. She'll be a top 5 defender, but I know it's been mentioned. I know you guys, Liam, on the free kick were saying that, maybe her ceiling is a bit capped now with the way that she plays in North Side. So I think you kept holding her, but I moved her to Charlotte Thomas this week, and I was pretty happy with making a bit of money and also getting about the same score. So Darcy Maloney, a bit quiet there with a 48. She's probably a trade. I think if anyone has still got her rolling around in their sides. And then Erin Hall, poor score. I'm sure she's on a lot of people's benches. She can also be moved on if it works out. Moving on to GWS and Richmond. So Richmond getting the win by 19 points after the game was delayed by half an hour with a snake on the thing. If that's not the most Australian thing, I don't know what is. But Elise Parker, top scoring 102. But Liam, I know that she got an injury. Do you know anything about what happened with her at all?
No, I was looking online this afternoon and did not see any official word from GWS, but having watched that footage live, they were definitely testing the stability of her knee afterwards. So even if it's not something uber serious, she was in a fair bit of pain and a lot of discomfort at the least. I'd be very concerned. Like, she did an incredible job to get to 102. I would be a little worried if you're an owner.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so I would imagine that she probably won't play this week based on seeing that, but I guess just keep an eye for everyone on the news. But it was good that she got, if there's ever, the good thing is she's still got 102 for owners, so hopefully she plays this week. But if not, then I guess she can move her on, and she got the 100 for you, but it's unfortunately she went down with injury there. Conti, 84. It was a very low-scoring game, this one, just the one player over 85, so Conti, 84, got a bit of attention from Lister around the ground, but still got to an okay score there. Gabby Seymour got an 81, so she was pretty solid there in the ruck as well. Ola Sheeran had a huge first half. I was very happy with the 61 at half time, but just had the 16 points in the second half. So a little bit like Emma Carney can have those halves and quarters where she doesn't really get involved much in the play, but 77, I'm pretty happy with that. Liam, do you think she'll still finish as the top 5 defender?
I think she'll get pretty close. It really is such a roll of the dice with her. Like this week, it was 4 free kicks, 4 and 2 against. She'll constantly have high numbers for both. She takes on the game so much and is so reliant on intercept possessions, which is why sometimes she can just have these incredible quarters because she just takes so many risks. She just runs as fast as she can at the ball and tries to intercept, and a bunch of times it pays off, and other times she's just completely lost at sea and doesn't get many touches.
Yeah. Zali Goldsworthy got a 70, so that's now back-to-back good scores for her. So I think if you've got her on your side, you're probably holding her while she's putting up these decent scores and putting a bit of cash in, especially if someone like Elise Parker is out for maybe a week or a couple of weeks or however long. I think Goldsworthy might see a little bit more CBA action if she from what she's already getting. So she was good on the weekend. Tani Evans, a little bit of a down again, but 66 is still a very good score, especially in defence when there's a lot of sort of up and down scores back there. So she was pretty good there. And then the final play I just want to touch on was Annalise Lister. Only scored the 40. So Liam, I'll go back to you for this one. Lister, is she a trade out? If Parker's missing, do we hold? What are your thoughts with Lister moving forward?
Look, it's really going to depend on cash for me this week. I would prefer to get Lister out. As much as I think she did actually a good role on Conti for most of it. So Conti still scored the second most points for Richmond, but really was having to do a lot of work to kind of get up the ground to try and get those possessions. And a lot of them were actually inside forward 50, almost as a forward marking target. It was one of those games where I don't know if you're watching or if you're an owner of listener. She was just about a foot behind Conti all the time and just wasn't laying the tackles that you wanted to see. It was a rough watch. I would probably suggest trading if you can. I just don't know if she's going to be able to accumulate enough. And GWS moved the ball so quickly. They were almost looking to put it over her head a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think she's a move out. Tom, one of your favourites, George Garnett, had a bit of a quiet game. Just any sort of quick thoughts on her?
Yeah, I don't think GWS are utilising her in a fantasy-friendly way. Like, she's becoming a key forward, right? So there's going to be those games where she's going to take bulk marks inside forward 50, maybe kick a goal or two, and then we're going to see a great score out of her anywhere between that 80 to 100 range. But then she's going to have games like this where there's very little involvement, 5 disposals. I know sometimes she's taking hit-outs in the forward 50 as well. I think it's cause for concern, especially if you're comparing her fantasy output and potential to last year. She's not the same player. She finished last year as one of the best forwards in the competition in fantasy score, and yeah, this year she just hasn't got that same touch. And I think it's just a role change. She's doing it for the team. I know she's joined the leadership group at GWS, but yeah, it's good for her, but not for fantasy. So yeah, I'd be looking at trading out and potentially resting Garnett until there's either a really good matchup or there's better players to sub.
Yeah. I just wanted to say one thing about this. I think any owner of Izzy Huntington, Georgia Garnett, Tani Evans should all be thanking their lucky stars that GWS lost this game, because their game style was about as fantasy unfriendly as you could possibly imagine in the middle few quarters. For whatever reason, Tani Evans came into the round leading the competition for metres gained. Georgia Garnett is someone who does get higher up the ground, takes bulk marks, like you said, led the comp for marks last year. For whatever reason, they decided, no, to hell with that. We're just going to kick it to anybody where, if Jess Doyle's the one who's got the ball, she's the one who's kicking it up the wing. Jodie Hicks, for whatever reason, we're going to give you free kicks, even though you can kick it quite literally half the distance of Tani Evans. It was just horrendous to watch from a fantasy point of view. And I don't actually think that GWS looked any better. I would have actually said they just looked so rushed and messy. I really hope that cooler heads prevailed here. It switches back to, at times against that game against Melbourne, they were actually looking like they could go toe-to-toe with them. And it was off the back of using Parker, Barr, Evans and Garnett to play kind of a really precise but also meters game style. And yeah, it was rough watch for most of this game. Tani Evans put in a shift late to actually get to 66. So just a word of warning there that it might not be all systems go at GWS for fantasy reasons.
Yeah. And Nicola Barr, who we didn't mention as well, got a 60. So I think a few people were considering on the forward line. Not a bad score. And as you said, hopefully cooler heads from they go back to this game style they were playing early in the season. Fleur Daves as well. If you've got it's a trade that, again, the game style wouldn't have suited with only the 13 points, but 48% time on ground. I was a bit afraid of this after seeing it in week one, that they may do this for the first few weeks and maybe even longer. So I would be trading her. And then Izzy Huntington played a bit more game time. I think she'd be better than what she performed the week of the 11. So I still don't mind her as a downgrade on your forward bench, because she wouldn't have gone. I don't know if you even go up any cash. So she's still not a bad target on the bench. Moving over to Adelaide and Essendon, with Adelaide getting the job done by 47 points. And it was, the two sort of usual suspects for the Crows getting the job done. Anne Hatchard had her biggest game for the season and really showed everyone why she's been one of the best mids in the comp for the last few years. And with 133 kicking, a couple of goals, 27 touches, 5 marks, 9 tackles, just doing everything. And then Ebony Marinoff with 124 with 22 touches and 15 tackles. So she was fantastic. So, Tom, I think that they're going to be in everyone's sides, and especially Anne Hatchard might be coming into a few more sides on the back of that big score.
Tell me about it. Yeah, 2 goals, 27 disposals, as you mentioned. Like, those statistics are just crazy to get out. And you're right, in terms of like the stack there, if you are considering it, or even just playing one or the other, it is always the 2 usual suspects. I love how you made that comment. Looking at the score, it's the same 2 every week. Just dominating their midfield, getting their hands on the ball, tackling machines. Like, just, mate, it's someone that's some of the safest plays you can make this year is putting either one or both into your midfield, because maybe they might not get the scores like Ghana where they go crazy and get you, like your 150s, 160s. But I don't think either one of them's going to go below 100 this year. That's how good they're playing. They're just in such great form.
Yeah, they're going on very, very nicely. And I know Noffy's owned by a lot of people, but Hatchard may become an option for a lot of coaches. Just, again, because she plays such high game time, again, 91% game time on the weekend. So, yeah, she'll be one to consider. But, Liam, I want to ask you about a girl from your Bombers, Bonnie Toogood. So that's now 3 really good games to start the year, 109. Is she a real option for – well, she was probably already a bit of a pod option for coaches in the forward line, but is she now a genuine option that could finish top 5 that coaches need?
Eat crow here and admit that I was not hot on the idea of Bonnie Toogood to start the season, but I think I really think I really love it as a pod, because I just think it's like that. You've just insulated from that risk, and we'll probably talk about it with Anya Tighe later. She does a bit of the same thing where if the team's up ahead and trying to conserve a lead, Bon will go back, or if they're really trying to stop, a dominant forward or have an elite pair of hands to take intercept marks, Woody has shown a propensity to just put Bonnie back there. She looked incredible again on the weekend. I don't begrudge anyone that picks her, and kind of wish I'd seen this in the tea leaves. But yeah, I really do like it as an option.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed with her. She played fantastic on the weekend. Maddie Prasparkas, again, just getting the job done. Couple of goals, got it to that 92. Again, I think she'll be better than that. Crows are normally a bit of a difficult matchup there for especially midfielders to score against. Danielle Ponta was good with 3 goals. I still worry about her consistency of being able to score above 60 on a regular basis. I think that she's could easily pop a 20 or 30 around the corner, but we know how good a player she is, and she's just very, very good to watch. Jean Ann scoring 85. Now, Liam, I don't know if you were on the same boat, but I traded her this week, unfortunately, unofficial. Did you do the same, and what did you make of her game?
Yeah, look, I traded her. I think she did a pretty excellent job, to be honest, to score well in a tough matchup. She really was the only Bombers midfielder who put their nose to the grindstone and made an effort to tackle Hatchard and Marinoff. I think the thing that really, you could probably still say that might be one of their better scores for the year is that with the Bombers being down, she was actually kind of spending a bit of time on the wing with some really interesting looking midfield combinations. Brooke Walker, Paige Scott, even Bonnie Toogood was in there. She looked really good. And interestingly enough, in the first quarter, she was actually playing a role on Anne Hatchard. And actually, I think Anne Hatchard had her quietest quarter in the first quarter. Yeah, she only had a 14.
Yeah,
it was actually when she left her that the game really started to open up. And I think part of that was just down to the Bombers losing Daria Bannister really throughout their stoppage structure and created a lot of issues. But yeah, I'm disappointed to have traded her out, but we're probably going to talk about Tiana Smith later, and I'll take that too.
Yeah. I'm sure she'll be coming up very soon when we get to her as well. Neve Kelly, solid again with a 61. Tom, I know you've been big on her, especially in GameDay Squad, and a 61 again. She's just finding a way to score at the moment.
Yeah, she is. And especially in GameDay Squad, when you get the extra point for kicks, it's a kick to handball ratio. So she doesn't like handballing it too often, but that is just perfect when you're looking at fantasy scores. So had the 13 disposals, 10 of them kicks, and that's quite common for her. Like 80 to 85% of her disposals will be kicks for the season. That's a little bit below our average, though, for the season. She's averaging 19.7. So, if that's like a bad game for Kelly this year, then I can't wait to see some of her better games moving forward. So, especially in GameDay Squad, that's someone that I'm going to be sitting on. I don't have a card. I'm really trying to get one at the moment. So, if anyone wants to trade here, feel more than welcome to trade me a Kelly. But yeah, I couldn't be bigger on someone, and I can't wait for the season she's going to have. And I just need to get her as soon as I can, because she's going to.
Yeah, she's looking very, very good in her second year at the Crows. Chelsea Randall, only 59. I think if he didn't already jump off, I probably would at this point. She's just playing sort of everywhere, which I know, Liam, you flagged in the preseason about playing in defence, and you also said that she is a player that can move around a lot more. So with Tia Charlton sort of taking another sort of step forward again, and sort of Noffy and Hatchard doing their thing. Sort of Chelsea Red is not required to be doing as much as what she has in the middle of the ground compared to what she was doing last year. So I'll be trading. Mia Bush put up a good score, which was nice. So just kick-starting a little bit of cash gen there with a 51. With her tackle pressure was probably the highlight there. Again, didn't get a lot of the ball, but she can tackle her way to a 50-odd every week, then that'll be good for some cash gen there. And then
just Bales, before you move on, if anyone is still considering holding Chelsea Randall, Stevie Lee Thompson went down in this game as well with some kind of back injury, and she's another defender. That is, again, another bad sign for Chelsea Randall, who did spend more time back this week. So it might that also might free up some opportunities for someone like what's her name again? The Eloise Jones, who has been a back flanker in the past and has scored above 60 there in season 6 in that role. So just flagging the possibility that she might be someone to drift back to. Yeah,
definitely something to keep a watch of there. And then Kiara Mueller as well, who's 35, but she scored 29 of those points in the third quarter. So she looked good in the third quarter, just didn't quite get enough of it in other games. So maybe if Stevie Lee Thompson is out, maybe she might get a bit more of the ball there, but I think she's on a lot of people's benches at this point anyway. Moving on to Melbourne and the Bulldogs, so another low-scoring fantasy game. So there's probably not too many players to really probably go in depth with here, but Tyler Hanks top score with 99. Obviously, a lot of people having her last year as a forward, but this year mid, so not as many owners, but 99 wasn't too bad if she's a pod pick there. Ellie Blackburn had a better game here with 97. I think she's probably just a little bit below those top midfielders, so I don't know if many people are going to be looking at bringing her in. Kate Hoare, I was definitely having nightmares after a pretty good start from her, but she sort of cooled a little bit, but still very good. Only the 3 marks, 1 tackle, but she's still getting up the ground, getting involved, and still a good option if you haven't brought her in or you still got her. Paxi had a good game, 80 points, kicked a couple of goals there as well. I'm assuming, Liam, out of the two, you're still preferring Kate Hoare over Paxi?
Yeah, I still do prefer Kate Hoare, but I'm just going to flag now that I think her ceiling is definitely dragged down substantially if it is a serious injury to Alyssa Bannon. Because I really do think that means Hoare spends just a little bit more time forward, because a lot of the Melbourne structure was always built on this idea of, well, if we stick Alyssa Bannon off the back of the stoppage, if the ball gets out there, literally no one can catch her. So it was always worth it just for that. But yeah, I also was very nervous when Kate Hoare's at 32 points at quarter time, and I'm like, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah, I was doing the exact same thing. I wasn't watching that game. I was watching the obviously Crows game, but I was looking at the scores and I was like, oh, what? This is like this is one of the worst trades of me getting rid of her that could be. But 82, not too bad. So. But yeah, both them did okay. We'll have to see how both Hoare and Paxi go moving forward. Katie Lynch had a decent game with a 75. Is she an option to be looking at now? Liam, I think she's probably dropped a little bit in price off the back of a couple of sort of lower scores. If maybe going like an Annalise Lister up to her, is she maybe someone that you could consider?
You could. She should be in your list. I'd be very nervous because she does this all the time. She can very easily go from this, but straight back down to like 30 or 40. I would be alarmed. Like I hate it if you want to take it as a risk, and for people who've held her to now, like you've been repaid exactly like I said, crap score 70. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it with a 10-foot pole, and she scored 23 points in the second half. So.
Yeah, I guess if you can go list up to her, that might not be a bad move because it's going to cost you probably less than 200k. But yeah, it's going to be sort of nervous watch week to week. But the defenders aren't scoring particularly well this year, or getting those big scores anyway. So Taylor Harris, a bit of a quiet game with a 46. She will have these games, but then she'll also have better games. So if you did own, I wouldn't be overreacting after 1 week unless you had a pretty good side, and then you can move on. But I know in GameDay Squad, she'll be in a lot of people's forward lines and not moving, just with sort of the lack of forward options to consider there. And obviously, as you mentioned before, Alyssa Bannon had a pretty serious injury there, so I have to see the extent of that. But if she is out for any length of time, then that could impact a few things in that Melbourne forward line. Moving to Freo and Hawthorne. Freo getting the job done by 13 points. in a low-scoring game, in a quite hot game as well. But on your tie, shout out to her. I had her in my game day squad, 118 points with 3 goals, and she had a score of 138 game day squad points. So I was very happy having her there. She was good. She's been very, very good this year. I don't know if I'd be considering her an official, but especially game day squad, I think she'd be a good option to put in your forward line, depending on matchups, because she can have these big games. Kiara Bowers, Tom, had a bit of a quiet game, just the 104. I think a lot of us after the first half have it being on 70 points. We're probably licking our lips thinking what a trade this has been, but 34 points in the second half. And she only ended up on just, I think, around the 120-odd mark in game day squad. So what were your thoughts on her game?
It was a funny one for Bowers because, normally I think her criticism is that she doesn't get to the ball first and her disposal count is quite low, which is normally why her tackle count is quite high. But in the first half, if I'm staying corrected, I think she led the game in disposals. So it was quite the opposite, that she was getting first to the footy, first hands to the footy, was being quite clean with it. But then, as you mentioned, in that second half, just really struggled to make any impact in the game, and especially in a game that was so tight. Like Hawthorne were marching back late in that game, and I really thought that they could get a roll on and potentially win the game. Like, they were definitely given their chances. But Bowers, like we spoke about it last week, and we thought that last week was a bad game for Bowers. So I would love to see what was a good game. But then, she's sort of gone against that grain, hasn't she, for her start fails. And, yeah, I'm not concerned. Like, it's Kiara Bowers. And as Jaden Popowski said in our last show, she's the GOAT of AFLW Fantasy and GameDay Squad Fantasy. Like, there's no one else you need to look at. But I will definitely be keeping a close eye on it, on the situation, because there just have been so many other great contributors in the midfield this year. So is it maybe time to start, is she on the fence for dropping out of some people's top 5 or even, in your teams? Is it worth paying that salary? Like, I do start to wonder, but I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to hit the panic button. You got to believe in Bowers. She will bounce back.
And she 97% game time as well, which was absolutely huge. When she went off for that, I think she went off like a couple of minute break in the second quarter, I think it was, and I was saying, damn it, I wanted to start for 100%, but no, it was a well-deserved break. But Liam, sort of, we'll go, I'll ask both of you about Bowers. So, what would you make of a game? I was happy in the first half, but second half wasn't quite what I was expecting.
Yeah, so I think there's a pretty clear reason why. Hawthorne are actually, as much as they put good pressure on the outside, they're just literally never first to the footy. That's the big problem this week. So, Kiara Bowers had 8 tackles. Now, she has had single-digit tackles. I've just had a look at this. Since round 7 of season 5, she has had, and where she's played full game time, she's had 3 games with fewer than 10 tackles.
Wow.
So that should give you some indication of why her scoring is low. And up to this point in the last, she had 10 so she had 5 tackles in that game where she came back against Brisbane Lions last year for only 71, and that was because she'd had no preseason. And then she had 1 of 10, and then basically just double digits. And then in her last 3, she'd had 20, 22, and 17 tackles in those games. So it's very clear why the scoring was down, and it was very much down to the fact, like, I watched this game because I was obviously brought Bowers in this week. Hawthorne couldn't get the ball first, and there was just so few stoppages as well. The ball was just flying around. It was hot, and everyone was just like kicking it as far as they possibly could, which is why Anya Tai took so many great marks, because the ball was just getting from end to end so fast. And I think it was like in the first 4 minutes, I think there was no stoppages. I think it just pinged around the entire time. So I'm pretty clear I know why Bowers' score was down, and my scoring was just down in this game for what I was expecting, kind of in general for tacklers. One player had double-digit tackles. And Fremantle up to this point had equal record for most tackles in each of their first 2 games.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about Bowers. I think Essendon will be a bit of a better matchup. I could see Essendon getting to the ball first lot, and then that's an opportunity for Bowers to get those tackle numbers back up. So if 104 is going to be our worst game for the year, and the thing is, maybe people that didn't bring her in this week, maybe go 104, go for Garner. They'll look at the big score, and then maybe Bowers goes 150 next week, and maybe Garner gets held to a lower score for the tag. We'll have to see anyway. Hayley Miller, 94. I know a lot of people brought her in round one, had a poor score, came back. She had a couple of okay scores since then. So a few coaches probably were hoping that they wish they kept, but I don't think she'd be a top 5. So it's not too bad moving her on. Emily Bates and Lucas Wright, 84 and 80 respectively. Again, a little bit lower due to just the lower sort of scoring game here. Kira Stratton had 78 there as well with the 10 toe. She was the only player on the ground with double digits. So she was good back-to-back weeks. If you jumped on her, a bit of a cheaper option, you'd be pretty happy with her score. Tamara Luke, 67 for anyone that still held on to her or playing her on field. 67 was not a bad score in this matchup here. Mimstrom, bit quieter here. Tom with only 57. That was probably the mistake I made. I played Strom over Ali Morfitt. Do you put this down to a bit with the sort of the game flinging around a bit and you expect her to go back to high-scoring ways, or do you think maybe the likes of Morfitt and that are maybe ahead of her in the pecking order in terms of ruck scorers?
Oh, it's funny because coming into the round, if I remember,
she was number one scoring ruck.
Yeah, but only by half a point to Ali Morfitt on GameDay Squad. So it was very close. It was 1-2, neck and neck, going at it. So, of course, after this round, that's not going to be the case. But I did think about it before the round. So irrespective of this game, and I was like, this is the 1 and 2 rucks for the year, Strom and Morfitt in my eyes. And that, yes, it's an off game. So, of course, you're going to look at this one and you're not going to be happy with it if you started it like yourself because – you're going to look at the score of Morfitt and think, gosh, darn it, like I could have had that massive score. Would have helped me out heaps in my rankings. But again, it's not a panic thing. Like we've seen that when Strom has a great matchup and the game is flowing, how many hit-outs she can win. So I don't think it's a cause for concern. I seriously do have her as my number 2 for this year. It might be because I am a Swans fan. Maybe that's why I have Ali as number 1 and same why I've been so high on Gardner. But yeah, if you're going to secure, a top 2 ruck, then I don't think you can really complain, so moving forward, I think it's okay. Don't stress. No time to hit the panic button. Strom will come back and she's going to be a hit out machine all year. So it's not going to change.
Yeah. Quick thoughts on Ange Stanner, Liam, 56 for you people who've still got her. Are you maybe jumping off with the good scores in the cash gen, or is she still something you're maybe holding for another week?
I would still consider holding her for another week because I think the Bombers will be a good matchup. She does have a relatively favourable role. Just starts off that half forward line and gets very high up the ground to lay tackles. I didn't mind how she looked on the weekend. I think you could hold just because we know what tacklers do well against the Bombers. Like Bates did it round 1, and then we just saw it from Noffy having her double digits. I think Stannett's probably up for, another 8 or 9 this week and get to that 70, which is still more than good enough. And then maybe you look to jump off after then.
Yeah. Moving on to the St Kilda and Port Adelaide matchup, the first game from today. Port getting the job done there by 8 points. Unfortunately, this was one of the games I didn't quite get to watch this weekend, but Jamie Lambert, top score with 95. I don't think she's on too many people's lists just due to playing a bit more forward. She had 2 goals, 2 in this game. So I think the role's a little bit not exactly what we're after. But Liam, you did mention before Ty Smith. What did you make of her game? That's now 2 pretty good scores back to back. Is there a play for maybe those coaches that jumped off? Could you go someone like a Benici or Davey down and use that cash to go get a Garner or something for an additional upgrade lister? What were your thoughts on Ty Smith's game?
You've basically just reiterated what I was talking about this afternoon, kind of watching this game. Like T. Smith, looks good enough to be a fieldable player and better than your D5. So I think that's a totally legitimate play. She looks really to have her legs back underneath her. I saw a little bit more of her in the marking game this week as well, getting around the ground and covering well. So I don't hate the play at all. And she's obviously got that tackling capacity within there. And even this week, she's only had 70% time on ground. So that 93 is looking like more of what we can expect going forward. And I think I had a look at St Kilda's run coming up, and I don't know if they have a particularly hard opponent for a few weeks.
Yeah, and you should know if Liam's talking positive about the St Kilda, the midfield, it's a good thing to know.
It's a bloody miracle.
Hannah Priest continued her fine form, Tom. I've got her in my game day squad. But is she an option that maybe coaches can really start? Like, a few coaches were looking at her in official Moreira's Magic, but is she a player that we can consider across all of the formats now and putting in her side?
Oh, all of the formats?
Pretty expensive.
Definitely game day squad. Yeah, like in official, I think it could be tough. But in terms of game day squad, you want to be playing one of the 6 highest output players every week, or at least what you have available within your club. And if Hannah Priest is one of those players in your defender spot, she's a must-start for me at the moment. So she's pushing up the ground a little bit more than maybe expected for the season. She had 26% in the offensive half, 74% in the defensive, but she's just being able to get heaps of kicks this year. She's averaging 15 disposals a game. This one, she had 12 kicks, 8 tackles as well. The tackle counts, so it's been quite good. It's been impressive from her. So, yeah, she's someone that in my defending group, when you're setting your lineup each week on Game Day Squad, she's not one of the people I'm looking at to sub out, I'll be honest with you. Her spot is very comfy in my defending group, and I've been loving what I've been seeing from Priest so far this year.
Yeah, she was very good once again. Abby Darrick had a pretty good game as well there with a 91. Gemma Houghton, who I had in my Game Day Squad, she scored a 79 and looks to be playing a bit more further up the ground with Ash Saint there, but I don't know if I'd be considering her an official. I think their scores would be a little bit too up and down to really consider an option. Matilda Schultz is just a very, very good player and very promising player for Port. Only 18 years of age and just, winning the hit-out battle pretty convincingly against the other Saints rucks. She had 24 hit-outs, and the other Saints rucks had a combined 22? So considering she's going up against a few different opponents, very, very good game from her. And I know a lot of people have got her in Moreira's Magic and official on field and just making bulk cash quickly, and then we can look at maybe don't even offload her at the end of the year based on how she's going. She's in the top 4 rucks, and again, Game Day Squad, very handy ruck to be putting in there if you didn't have an Ali Morfitt there already, or Alice Edmonds potentially. Actually, we didn't actually touch on Alice Edmonds before, but we might touch on her at the end when we get through these games. Erin Phillips, 71. I know that in Game Day Squad, she's only a mid, but in the other front, she's a forward and been a pretty popular option. So, Liam, what were we thoughts at Erin's game today? The marks were down, which probably contributes to only the 70, but are you still a fan of having her? She obviously kicked her first goal for Port Adelaide as well.
Yeah, I think the role is still pretty good. People were concerned that Maria Maloney would be kicking her out kind of a lot, but she still had that 94% time on ground, was still getting decent enough CBAs. It was a very almost game for Erin. There was a lot of times where she was just trailing in another Port Adelaide player for a tackle, or she wasn't really throwing herself in. So I don't know if she's necessarily going to have that 90 ceiling that we saw in round 1. But this was a lower marking game, and you're going to find that at a lot of times when the game is at, Casey, or it's down at Moorabbin, where it's often substantially more windy than in other places. You're going to notice that marks will be down. So I think last week was a brutal matchup for midfielders, and your name's not Laura Gardner. And I think this is kind of this 70 to 80 is probably more of what I'm going to expect for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Moving down the list here as well, there was Caitlin Pope got a 37. So actually, just quick words on her, Liam. I don't know if you caught this game much, but what did you make of her debut?
Yeah, looked pretty lively and looked like someone that they would probably keep around for her. What she kind of offered them in that second half. There was a few times where she was really the spark speed-wise for Port Adelaide. So probably someone that isn't going to kill your bank account to bring in on your bench if you're looking for someone to downgrade to, who I think, and having had a look a bit at her scoring, or at least her disposals and stuff in the Sanford W, she was averaging like 16 to 17 touches a game in the Sanford W. So I don't think this is a bad downgrade option or whatsoever.
Yeah, and because it wasn't a huge score, she's not going to go up a lot. So I think there's still time to be jumping on her in the official format. And then final one here, Nikki Zenos. I know a few people after round 1 were keen after scoring the 80, but she's backed it up, unfortunately, with a 38 and a 28. So just not quite being able to sort of put the consistency together and sort of playing that forward role more so. But when she's in the midfield, though, she can score well. But I guess something to watch. Yes, yep.
Just wait for Del Santo to get fired. And then when we hear, the midfield group is Nikki Zenos, Georgia Patrikios, and Gianna Smith, then we launch.
Yeah, I was good because she's looked very promising when she's moved in the midfield, but it's just she's sort of been stuck forward a bit. So again, she's still young and got plenty of time to get this midfield opportunity. Only 22 years of age, so especially for like dynasty stuff in GameDay Squad, if you've got her as a forward, I wouldn't be getting rid of her by any means. I think she's still a player that you want to hold on to. Good. Moving over to West Coast and Carlton. Carlton getting a big win here, 53 points. Bree Moody had more time in the ruck, but still was pretty 50-50 with Jess Good's 31 hit-outs, Bree Moody 24 hit-outs there. So I don't think I'd be bringing her in off the back of a big score. If anything happened to Jess Good, then that's a different conversation. Emma Swanson, 97, had a very good first half, a little bit quiet in the second half, got stuck on the bench for a fair while in the third quarter, but she was good. I was a bit nervous that I was going to have a lot of points conceded after the first half when I decided to trade Riddell instead of Swanson. But 97, she's just consistent, gets a job done every week. Kitty Shearer, so mainly just relevant in Mirror's Magic. A few people have got her in official, but Liam, what did you make of her game this week?
This is one that I did not get to watch much of the first half of, but I really think she's just cemented herself inside that, core three midfielders at Carlton. Kind of does a little bit of everything. I don't think she's someone that will excel when Carlton are getting absolutely smacked around, but the fact that she's, I think, maybe second for tackles again for Carlton suggests that, particularly if you've got her at Moreira's Magic, she's not a trade-out priority whatsoever and a great pick for those that took her. Yeah, she was got the job done once again, and so too did Ella Roberts with another 80. Again, had a very good first half, a little bit quieter second half, but I think West Coast is going to be a little bit like that, very up and down based on the first few weeks that we've seen here. But 80 is still a very good score, and you're taking that. Marianne Anthony, 74, making good cash again. She's going to be quite expensive now for a lot of people's benches if she's there. So downgrading her potentially to a Ty Smith could be a popular play, if not going even further down. Charlotte Thomas, 68. Tom, what did you make of Charlotte Thomas's game? I think went off with a dislocated finger, came back on, had a pretty good second half, especially that third quarter. What did you make of her game?
I think she played great this game. Of course, a lot of the ball, unfortunately, was down back for the West Coast Eagles. It was a bit tough for them throughout the contest. But, yeah, she played really well. I know she was an option in a lot of people's GameDay Squad teams early, and I definitely got the sense of some disappointment from her first game or two. But, yeah, I think she's bounced back quite well here. Like the 15 disposals, plenty of kicks. And in terms of, like, the top defenders for the week, I'll do the numbers when we do the bronze squad later. But I know that she was somewhat up there. She was creeping. So, yeah, Charlotte Thomas, it's definitely someone that I'll be looking at. I have a gold in GameDay Squad, so I don't know if necessarily I want to spend my salary cap there. But if I can have a bronze or a silver maybe in my packs this week, then, yeah, she's definitely someone that needs to be in consideration for lineups.
Yeah, and I brought her in official this week, and going down from Carney, it only cost me a point, but gave me a couple $100K. So Charlotte Thomas is definitely a player, especially with West Coast struggling with the ball being back there. She would be one. If you can go listed to Charlotte Thomas, that would be a nice move that I would make there. Tom, Gab Pound, bit of a quieter game this week with a 58, and then Harriet Cordner with just a 50. What did you make of their games? Is that a bit concerning with sort of ball being shared around a bit and then Karen Peterson coming back soon, or are you sort of still think that they'll sort of be able to get the job done and you're sort of maybe holding off for another week and seeing how they go?
I'm holding off for another week for sure. Is it concerning? Yes, definitely. Is there too many mouths to feed maybe in that defending group now? Yeah, that could be the case. But, of course, you do have to consider the score of this game. You do need to consider the flow of the game as well. Like, it just wasn't one of those games where it was going to be fantasy-friendly for Carlton defenders. So it's definitely a scenario that I'll be keeping my eye on. I was definitely leaning towards Cordner being the better player over Pound, especially early this year. But, Pound had that 90 bomb last week. She was amazing in GameDay Squad. And they're both disappointing this week. So moving forward, I'll be keeping a close eye. I currently have Cordner edged out a little bit in terms of fantasy potential for the remainder of this season. But, yeah, there's definitely some questions to be answered from the round, mate.
Yeah,
sure.
Liam, just your quick thoughts on that current back mix.
Yeah, I'm not actually concerned by the scoring in this game because, as was said, it's not a great game for defenders to be scoring. Like if you look at the top scorers for Carlton, the first defender is Gab Pound at 58, and then the next one is Harriet Cordner with 50. And they had a massive team score or they would have had their highest team score this week with over 1,200 points in official scoring. So I don't think that's the bigger concern. I think the problem is their matchup next week is really rough for defenders. I think they go up against Richmond this week, and that is I believe the hardest matchup for defenders. And this was meant to be a slightly easier one. So I think in terms of potential to actually score well, I'd probably say Cordner next week will probably score a little better because she still managed, even in this game with ball not really being down there, she still had her tackles and her marks. So she still had her 3 marks and her 4 tackles with not actually having to touch not the ball not being near them that much at all. So I, again, would be wary of bringing either of them in. And if you wanted to use a cash from someone else to upgrade Cordner in the next 2 weeks, if you're running her at D5 like a lot of people are, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd be holding off one more week, and then we'll see how it goes. And if she puts up another bad one, then maybe you could look to jump off. Moving on to the next game, we'll quickly throw through the last 2 games here. Gold Coast getting the job done over Collingwood, a bit of an upset here by 12 points. So, Liam, I'll go to you for the first couple of players here. So, Britt Benici, 91, Bree Davey, 88, and then Charlie Rowbottom, a little bit down on to what she's been doing in the first couple of weeks with 81. What are your just quick thoughts on those 3 players?
Just a really low-scoring game. But also, I'd like to give props to myself. Lucy Single was never going to tag Britt Benici to start this game and only did it for about 5 minutes in the fourth quarter. It was always going to go to Bree Davey because she is that kind of dominant player. I think Rowbottom, like all 3 of them, were just kind of being kicked around a lot. And this game overall was pretty low scoring. So I think their market share will still be high enough that if you're a hot on them before, this game is not going to be the game that turns you off.
Yeah, I agree. Is there a play to trade out a Benici or a Davey, or are you still a fan of holding him considering they did score pretty well and they were the top 2 scoring players for the game?
I think it is definitely a play because I'm not sure that Benici has the ceiling in this current Carlton side. And I also think that Benici is such a dominant tag target. Every week she's now going to cop someone because I think they might have St Kilda next week, which almost certainly guarantees some attention from Hannah Priest. And then I think it's attention in like each of the next 4 games. So I think it is definitely a play to be considering a trade.
Right, so was Benici or Davey?
Sorry, Davey. Davey is definitely a trade option. And then Benici, I just don't know if she has the ceiling to really push up into that top, let's say top 10, because that's really what it is. It's like a top 4 and then a big blanket of players who could all be worthwhile for picks for 3 weeks because they can go kind of 120. And I just don't know if Benici has that at the moment.
Yeah, there's a play. I'll go through my trades at the end, but there's a play that I'm considering that might even shuffle Benici, Davey, and Riddell out. But we'll get to that when we get later into shortly when we can finish the last couple of games. So moving to the others, Daisy Darcy had a good game with 76 as well. Sarah Rose, 75. Tom, I know she's been a pretty popular player in GameDay Squad, especially in the forward line. So she had another good game. Do you own her at all?
I just got a trade for her this week. Was stoked about it. So yes, I finally do own Sarah Rowe. You just got to look at the form she's in as a forward. 18 disposals a game, 16 of them being kicks. We talked about Ian Kelly before, how her kick to handball ratio is just sublime. So is Sarah Rose. Sarah Rose loves putting the ball in the boot, and in GameDay Squad, that is so valuable at that forward position. She also, is underrated with the tackling, other stuff as well. But Sarah Rose, a player that I loved bringing into my forward line this week. I got her now, mate. It's about time.
And I know that she was getting involved with the free kick stuff this week, Liam. I think she was commenting on a post about the widest teeth, which was quite cool as well. Don't know if you saw. That
was a fun moment. Oh, absolutely, I did. I'm the one running the free kick account. I see everything.
Yeah, no, mate, you see everything, even if it's not on the free kick, mate. You're all over it. Lucy Single, 66 as well. Solid score, getting the job done with 8 tackles as well there with the 20 touches. She's looking quite impressive in the midfield there for Gold Coast. Brent Catazano and Eve McLaughlin, and also is it Mira Gervin, all scored 35. Well, Brent Catazano and Eve McLaughlin 35, Gervin 33. So lower scores there. They're on most people's benches, but I guess if trades may be going some of them down to get cash, depending on how expensive they are, that could be a potential play there as well. So moving on to the final game of the round, Brisbane and Sydney. Liam, I'll open the floor again to you, mate. Laura Gardner, if you wanted anything else you wanted to add that you didn't add from the plus from your +3 bit at the start.
Oh, look, I reckon I could do about 10 minutes, but she's just a gun. Like I know that Brisbane were tagging Chloe Malloy, but like I think that the thing that we really saw from Gardner is in that like second half as well. She was popping up her marks and like sitting slightly behind the ball and mopping up. Like she literally does everything. She covers the ground so well. She has 93% time on ground as a player, getting 41 touches and 5 marks and 9 tackles. Like I know last year, like everyone, like we all got around Elise Parker because she's just this gun who's like 22 and she just leads a midfield group that really was struggling for talent, does everything. But I think the stat sheet stuffing from Laura Gardner is on a next level. And I'm just glad that, I'm just glad there's a bit of vindication.
Yeah, and we can enjoy this year as a forward because it's not going to take a rocket science to figure out she'll be just a straight mid next year. So, but the thing that was good is that in her quarter split, she had 36 points in the first quarter, 36 points in the second, 35 in the third, and 44 in the last. So just the consistency across the 4 quarters was just fantastic there. Ali Anderson got a 101. I'm still a little bit skeptical of her ceiling just with the or sort of her floor games, I should say, as well, is the fact that I think she'll get attention. She did get a bit of attention from Tanya Kennedy here, but I think that she could have some sort of up and down. But if you had her, obviously, Tommy, got your thoughts before, but Liam, is she now that sort of is maybe the Alice Edmonds of last year? Is she the ruck that maybe we've probably got to look to target over an Alice Edmonds and like a Mim Strom this year, or have you still got maybe those 2 ahead of her?
I just think that if you've got Matilda Schultz, I don't know if you're targeting a trade at this point because she's just she's had some great games, but I also think that there's probably a world where she does get a little bit of a talking to because her kicking efficiency is pretty horrific. And I think going into this round, I think she led the competition for clangers. So I do wonder if there is maybe a word of warning game style wise going forward, as much as Scott Gowans is very high on her. But I also don't know, she's put 20 odd points on top of Matilda Schultz, but I don't know if that trade is going to be worth it when we are carrying some less than spectacular players, at F5 or in our kind of bottom 2 defender position. So maybe mid-season we can reassess, but I also think by that point, I'm really hoping that Carlton have realised that Bree Moody should be a ruck and she'll be the actual trade-in target that we all want to have.
Yeah. And there'll be 67% of people that probably don't have Schultz that may consider Ali Morford. But yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be making the move off of her. But I guess in GameDay Squad, if you've got Morford, you're chucking her onto your field for the time being. She's looking very, very good at the moment. Tanya Kennedy looked good as well. 77 points. If you're looking for a potential, a little bit more expensive downgrade option defence, a good game from her. We'll see her rise in price a fair bit over the next fortnight or so. Sophie Conway, Tom, I know you've been hot on in GameDay Squad with 73 points with 3 goals. You were doing pretty happy with her game, but probably a bit nervous as well. She went down with a little bit of a sort of niggle, I think, in the third quarter, but she played out the game and she was fine. So I'm pretty sure you're happy with her.
From memory, I think it was just before half time.
Sorry, it might have been.
Back soreness, was tight. Came out of the half and ended up kicking another 2 goals. So I think her back's feeling okay. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that's the case. Like I do have a feeling she's going to come off this one pretty sore. She was involved quite a bit. But the funny thing was watching this game is that she just had one of those like sneaky, quiet games where she was just doing her business. But I actually thought she could have played better, which I think is a testament to how good she probably can play this year. Her accuracy in front of goal definitely boosted her points, kicking 3-0. That was huge for her fantasy potential for the day. But I see her getting more involved in terms of disposals moving forward. And I've only just traded for a Sophie Conway. And like when you're playing on this Lions team, so high octane, the ball's moving so quick. She's going to reap the benefits of being part of this system. And with her skill and class, like it's going to be a great year for Sophie Conway.
Yeah, agreed. Couple of Sydney players here. Chloe Malloy, 58. 4 behinds. Tagged by Cassie Spark for the whole day. I wouldn't be trading her out by any means. I wouldn't be removing her from your game day squads either. I'd be keeping her in. I expect her to respond this week, and they come up against West Coast. So very good matchup there. I expect Malloy to bounce back in a big way. And I'm not going to steal anything from the captain segment, Liam, but West Coast this week, having a look at thinking about that, Laura Gardner, mate, she might be in the top sort of captain options this week. Maybe we'll have to see.
She's going to be a close run thing, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just I still can't believe how well she's playing so at the moment.
151 points. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Ella Heads, as a non-owner, trading her out a couple of weeks ago when I was getting Bree Davey in my side, I was fine moving her on. 3/4 time, I was happy. 22 points. Non-owners, so owners would have been probably pulling their hair out. And she has a 39 points last quarter, and that's probably what saw me drop rank in the end. But if you've got it, I think she's still a hold, especially with the West Coast matchup this week. Liam, is she a trade back in option, or are you still a bit sceptical after those first 3 quarters?
Look, I don't like the scoring consistency. There was just far too many times where, she got stuck on the bench in the 3rd quarter, which meant she only scored 2.
11 minutes, 12 minutes on the bench.
What I've seen. I have not liked what I've seen from Sydney kind of transitioning the ball out of their back for scoring for Ella Heads. Kind of, we saw it in the practice game, and we see it in the 4th quarter as well. She's a very, very long kick of the ball and is a good intercept mark, but they're not really chipping it around as much and trying to control the ball. And I think I know that they're not the same player, but Tanya Kennedy was playing almost a little bit Ailish Sheeran-y in the way she was just taking marks and just sprinting off, like not going back on the mark and just sprinting away and then trying to get some distance. So I wouldn't be trading her in. I think current owners are really hoping that Sydney do transition back more to that chip mark style that sees Heads get higher scores, but I'm a little worried. I think that wouldn't be getting her in after a decent score this week. Maybe watch, as you said, a couple of weeks and see if they go back, but something to monitor there. Talia Hickey only 60 here. Sort of Ali Morford dominating the hit outs there, 38-14. I think Talia Hickey will be better in future games, but maybe not quite sort of that top, maybe 2 or 3 ruck that a few people may have tipped her maybe to push herself into this year. Lily Postlethwaite had a pretty good first quarter and a decent enough game overall with a 49. I guess she could be a popular sort of downgrade on the bench maybe this week to make a little bit of cash there as she'll rise up a bit this week. Paris McCarthy as well had a pretty good game there with 40 points in her debut game. So her and Pope scoring pretty similarly. Both are downgrade options to consider. Liam, just who would you be picking out of Pope and McCarthy if you're downgrading in the midfield? I'd probably be going Pope. Pick the player in the team that won a game and who's played before.
Yeah. Also, did you see what happened to Montana Ham? Apparently, she was ruled out with foot soreness.
No, I didn't see what happened to Montana, but I would be a little worried because I think she had foot issues coming into this game.
Yeah, that's something to monitor if he did. I don't think many people got after missing the first weekend or whatever, but if someone out there did, or maybe if you got her in game day squad, you put her on your field, that's probably something to be keeping an eye on as well. So beautiful. All right, so we've run through the games. We've gone a little bit long, but I don't know if you guys want to stick around 5 minutes to answer questions, or do you want to wrap up? I'm happy to do either.
I'm happy to do 5 minutes of questions.
Yep.
Let's
Question time.
Let's get the trade brain.
Yep, sweet. All right, let's smash through some questions, and I'll get some good ones here. John's got the first one. He said, should we jump off Hooker and Phillips? So, Liam, should we be jumping off? I don't know about Phillips, but Hooker?
I always thought that Ola Dwyer and Conway were the better options than Dana Hooker, and I would be jumping off, but I'd actually hang on. Before I say that, let's not launch too quickly. Yeah, look, I don't know if they've not got a great run coming up West Coast for midfielders, so I think you could jump off now.
Matt says, is Emma Carney a trade out with an average of just 69? Tom, what are your thoughts?
I fortunately don't have her in GameDay Squad currently. I know last week we spoke about it and we thought that this week was going to be a great matchup and that maybe you'd have the prospect of getting a bit of cash generation in your AFL Supercoach format and then, probably moving on. But that wasn't quite the case. So I'm definitely concerned. Is it time to just, cut losses right now and trade her out? I'm not exactly sure. I think that's a little bit dependent on your situation. But definitely in terms of GameDay Squad, she's someone that even if I did have her card, I would struggle to put her in my best 6 defenders for next round.
Yeah, she's.
I actually reckon it'll be a good round for North this week because we've kind of seen what defenders can do against Brisbane. They can have 39-point final quarters, and that's kind of what Carney was able to do. In that first game, she had an excellent first quarter off the top of my head, and then had a really good first half, and then
even
really
last game.
She had 20. She had 27, and then at 22 in the first half. The problem there was that was actually when Geelong were looking good, and the ball was down there, and then North literally just turns a switch, and Geelong could not get it near their inside 50s. So I think Brisbane are probably going to put up an even stiffer challenge than Geelong did. And so if you were looking to trade out, it might actually be the week after that you look to get rid of Emma.
Yeah. So going to this one here, Corey says he's ranked 32 overall. It's a very, very well done, Corey, mate. Who does he go from? Does he go Carney down this week to then go List up? And if so, who would be the two, Liam? Sort of two to come to mind is maybe a Charlotte Thomas and Katie Lynch in that 600 odd high 600k price bracket.
So going into the round, let me just have a look at that 600k bracket. Just give me a second. Yeah, I think it's definitely Charlie Thomas is probably number one on that list. I think as well, this might be the week that Nat Grider really does explode as well. I think that she had some great moments when Sydney were actually looking good in that first half and were testing Brisbane a little bit, and she was laying a bunch of tackles.
Yeah. It's definitely something to look at because we know that Nat Grider can put up some good scores. Oscar says Tom a jump off corner, Tom.
Oh no, I believe. I do think it's one of those situations that I'm going to be watching very closely, especially next round. Who do Carlton have next week? They've got the Tigers.
Worst matchup.
Yeah, it's probably maybe a week. But it's dependent. If you're talking your traditional formats, then it could be the round to do it. But especially in GameDay Squad, fortunately, you don't have to completely part ways. So I'll be benching this week in GameDay Squad. But in your traditional format, it could be tough to reason starting Cordner against Richmond because things might only get worse before they get better.
Yeah, well, let's hope they stay on a high. I'll go one more for each of you, and I reckon then we'll wrap up there. So got a couple of good ones here. So I'll just quickly flick through. What one should we go for here? Okay, so Ben's got this one for you, Liam. So he said, who goes first out of Cordner, Pound, and Heads? If I can get Priest only for the most expensive, should I do it? Or would you get another? So firstly, I'll ask you the first one. Who goes out of Cordner, Pound, and Heads if you're trading?
Oh, I think you could. Well, it's one where I probably want to see the break evens first, because if it's at the point where Cordner is kind of stagnating her cash gen, kind of with that 50, I think you could definitely make the case that she's a trade out. But I actually think I'd probably get Pound, to be honest. I just don't know if I like what she's going to look like with Karen Peterson coming back.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think all three have got potential flags on them there, so you could move on. Then is Hannah Priest the pick if you're looking for a sort of any price defender, or would you be going maybe another option in defence? Like is maybe Tani Evans, is she still the player that you get there? Sheeran, who would you be going in defence?
I think the value of someone like an Eilish Sheeran is something I really like, and I love, and I've talked about her ad nauseum at this point. I really love what I've seen from Dizzy Darcy.
I had a feeling
at the Gold Coast Suns. She's a good pod. She's still relatively lowly owned. So she's still below 5%. I really love the
4.78.
idea of Daisy Darcy, and I cannot, in good conscience, suggest trading in a St Kilda player.
Yeah. I did like what I saw from Dizzy Darcy today. She was very good once again. And then final question, I'll go to you. Bowers, Marinoff, Garner, and Prasparkas. Who do you think will be fighting for that number 5 mid spot for the rest of the season? So is it Rowbottom? Is it someone else? Is it maybe is Hatchard put a name back in the ring? Is Riddell still there? Who would you be having as that 5th midfielder, Tom, or maybe a couple of names you'd have in the mix?
Oh, I love this question. Rowbottom's become definitely a favourite of mine. I can't lie. I think she's becoming a bit of a fan favourite just in general this year. I know Jaden was covering it, how big the Gold Coast midfield is scoring this season. They look like they're going to be the most fruitful midfield of them all. So I definitely think that is a great play. Maybe even a bit of a smoky. Her teammate Whitford, as I just mentioned, like how good that is. I think Davies in and amongst the mix. Even Maddie Prasparkas is going to be in and amongst that mix. Like, I think she's been a little bit underrated this year. She hasn't had those massive scores like some of our other midfielders, but gosh, she's been good. She's been so consistent. So if I had to pick one,
it's Rowbottom, I think.
Yeah, it's Rowbottom. I was going to mention Bates as well, but I think Bates is just that little bit below the players I just mentioned in terms of production. So I think it just has to be Rowbottom at number 5. But I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of those other names were close to the mark.
I think A. McDonald and Emma Swanson are probably two other names there that could be close. But Liam, did you want to add anything there? Maybe your thoughts on the 5th midfielder, maybe a couple of names in the mix?
Yeah, I still think it is Rowbottom, but I cannot resist what I saw from Anne Hatchard.
I was going to,
I think she's a cut above with the ceiling that she can have because she does she does kick a bunch of goals, and I'd just like to give a shout out to Nostradamus myself. In my captain's ranking this week, I called Anne Hatchard to kick 2 goals, and lo and behold, that's exactly what she did.
Perfect.
So I think in terms of Jaden's point about super high scoring midfield at Gold Coast, I actually think that that's a reason for a little bit of a flag because that suggests to me that there's a potential for regression to the mean because I don't think, personally looking at that Gold Coast side, they are a dominant midfield. I think Rowbottom is dominant, but I don't know if that's sustainable long term. And we saw that today. They had actually a really low scoring game overall. Yeah,
it was a bit of a lower scoring game there. Just comment here, Jake from obviously Hat Chat, legend, another fellow South Aussie, says, do we have defenders jumping out for trades? Feel like they're just sideways moves, lost points on both last 2 trades. And I think that's the point. The defenders have been very up and down. So that's why I'm almost keen to give another week to the defenders and just sort of trade around them. But I guess it'll be something that we'll have to look at. But boys, that will be where we cut off. Bit of a longer one, probably about 10 minutes over what we did, but that's all right. We had a good, great chat anyway. Tom, mate, as always, thanks for jumping on to me as the co-host. Where can people find you across the socials and where can people find and sign up to GameDay Squad?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. You can find me on Twitter at TommyGDS. Go over to YouTube, follow GameDay Squad's YouTube channel. We do a AFLW review of each round, and I'm joined by Bales and Jaden Popowski. So definitely make sure you head over to their YouTube, subscribe there, and you can start playing GameDay Squad for free at www.gamedaysquad.com.au. It's a bit of fun. You get 30 free player packs to get started on your journey of building a dream squad. So definitely get in amongst it. Have some fun. Hopefully you love it. And, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to message me on my Twitter, whatever that is. But, yeah, cheers, Bales. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tom. And then also the NBL just released on GameDay Squad as well. So if any basketball fans out there, make sure you get in amongst that action as well. Liam, mate, thank you very much for jumping on with us for a chat. Just quick early thoughts of before we sort of go through your socials, any early trade thoughts that you're considering?
Oh, there's a bunch. There is a world where I do turn Annalise Lister into a better player, and then I actually bring Tiana Smith on field because I think she's more than fieldable at this point and has a good enough run coming up. I'm also looking at trading in Charlie Rowbottom or Jazz Garner because I think that their scoring at the moment is pretty irresistible and they've got the ceiling. But I really haven't come in with a cohesive plan this week. I've come in a little bit unders with my score, so there'll be a lot of thinking now before we record the free kick pod tomorrow.
Yeah, and make sure you guys give that a listen. And that leads us into Liam, mate. Where can the people find you across socials, and where can people find Free Kick across socials, and where they get their podcasts?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Liam AFLW Fantasy, and you can find the Free Kick Pod on Twitter and Instagram at Free Kick W Pod. If you've got any questions, there's a Twitter post up right now asking for any of them, and we'll try and get to as many as we can on this week's episode. And you can find us basically wherever you get your podcast otherwise.
Yeah, and then also Thursday night, is there doing on Twitter? Is that going to be maybe a regular thing, or is that going to be maybe week to week?
It's going to be a week-to-week proposition. It's something that I like to do, but work and commitments get in the way. So I'd like to know a little bit earlier, but the nature of the lives we have around fantasy doesn't mean that I can guarantee it each week.
Yeah, well, that's another reason. If you're not already following Free Kick cross socials, make sure you do, because then you can keep up to date if there is going to be Twitter space and also all the great content there. You can find me at BalesDT on Twitter and Instagram, then trulybailshd on YouTube. Make sure you give the video a like on YouTube, subscribe there, give the Twitter space and stuff a like on Twitter, and you can follow at AFL Fantasy Fans for where we do our pre-lockout chats on Fridays and our round reviews on the Sunday nights. Looking forward to the pre-lockout chats returning to normal time in a couple of weeks after the grand final at about that sort of 6 o'clock mark or whenever the later games are. But my current trade plans early is I'm looking at probably two options. It'll be May Riddell down to a Hatchard, Postlethwaite down to a Huntington, and then Lister up to a Katie Lynch. Or I might even just leave Lister for a week. I might go one of Benici or Davey down to Ty Smith, and then go Davey and Riddell up to Garner and Prasparkas, or Prasparkas and Rowbottom, or whatever, two of those three. So we'll have to see how we go. But boys, thanks for jumping on. Thanks everyone that sent questions in and players to be discussed. We appreciate that across both YouTube and Twitter. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys same time, same place next Sunday, and we'll catch you on Friday night for the pre-lockout chat. So thanks, guys. Have a good week. Cheers.
Cheers, legends.
See ya.